I gave up everything for love, but was love ready to fight for me? It's funny how love feels like the answer to every question, until the world starts asking questions you can't answer. I thought walking away from Sophia would be the hardest part of my story. But I was wrong. The hardest part wasn't leaving her, it was proving to the world that I wasn't crazy for doing it. That I wasn't stupid for throwing away a life of luxury for a woman who didn't even believe she was worth loving. But deep down, I knew. Anissa was worth it all. The night I stood at her door, heart pounding and hands trembling, I had no plan, just a truth too big to keep hidden. I loved her. And for once in my life, I wasn't going to let fear silence my heart. But love, as I soon learned, is not enough to silence the world. The next morning, the storm hit. It didn't wait. It didn't knock. My phone exploded with messages. Missed calls from my parents. Cold, sharp texts from old friends. What have you done? You're making a mistake. She'll ruin you. Come home. Home. That word suddenly felt like a lie. A mansion made of rules, masks, and expectations. But here in Anissa's tiny apartment, with peeling paint and a window that barely shut, I felt something I had never felt before: peace. And fear. At the same time. She looked at me as if I were made of glass, afraid she might drop me. Or maybe afraid I'd shatter on my own. You still have time to go back, she whispered that morning. They'll take you back if you just say this was all a mistake. I stared at her. Is that what you think this is? Her silence was louder than anything I'd ever heard. That silence haunted me more than Sophia's tears. We tried to make it work. We cooked meals together, shared late-night conversations, and smiled more than we cried. But even in the smiles, I could see it, the fear in her eyes, the way she never fully relaxed, as if waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wanted to tell her it wouldn't. That I'd never leave. That love would be enough. But was it? One night, I woke up to find her sitting on the floor by the window, hugging her knees, tears running down her face. I sat beside her, afraid to speak. This isn't your world, she said finally. You're not built for this. I've lived this life, the broken fridge, the noise from the street, the late rent, the fear of losing everything. You haven't. You don't know what this does to a person. I reached for her hand. She didn't pull away, but she didn't hold back either. I'm not afraid of this life, I said. Not if it's with you. She looked at me, then really looked, and I saw it again. That question. That silent scream in her eyes, are you sure? Are you strong enough to love someone like me? I didn't answer with words. I leaned forward, pressed my forehead to hers, and whispered, try me. That night, as she finally fell asleep in my arms, I realized something important: love isn't loud. It's not grand speeches or fairy tale endings. It's staying when it's easier to run. It's listening when it's easier to defend. It's believing in someone who doesn't believe in themselves. And that's what I was going to do, no matter how hard the world made it. I gave up the world for her, now the world wants its revenge. They say when you walk away from comfort, pain becomes your new shadow. And pain, it followed me everywhere. I lost everything the week I chose Anissa. My family froze me out like I was a stranger. My father, the man whose approval I chased for years, didn't even bother calling. He sent a single message through my younger brother: he made his bed. Let him lie in it. So I did. On a mattress laid on the floor of Anissa's tiny one-bedroom flat, where the fan squeaked every night and the tap leaked like it was crying for me. I didn't complain. I couldn't. Not when Anissa had survived like this for years without a single soul to lean on. But surviving and living aren't the same. And some days, I wasn't sure if we were doing either. Money ran low. I tried applying for jobs, but every door seemed to shut the moment they recognized my last name. My old life had power, and now, it was using it against me. I went from wearing tailored suits to washing dishes in a back alley cafe. From champagne parties to counting coins for groceries. And Anissa watched it all in silence. Her guilt grew louder with every sacrifice I made. I never blamed her, not once, but I could see it in her eyes. Every time I came home tired and defeated, she flinched like I might leave. She never said it, but I knew what she was thinking. He gave up gold for dust. How long before he realizes it doesn't shine? One night, I found her crying in the bathroom, muffled sobs behind a locked door. I knocked. Anna, talk to me. She didn't open it. I can't be your regret, she finally whispered. I can't be the reason you fall. My heart shattered. I sank to the floor outside the door and whispered back, then help me fly. The door creaked open a few minutes later, and there she was, eyes swollen, face red, heart wide open. She collapsed into my arms, and we cried together on that cold bathroom floor, wrapped in silence and the smell of cheap soap. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't beautiful. But it was real. And sometimes, real is enough. The next few days brought small wins. I picked up a second part-time job, delivering packages overnight. The money wasn't much, but it helped. Anissa, despite her worries, stood beside me. She cooked, cleaned, and made sure I had something warm waiting after every shift. She didn't say I love you often, maybe she was still afraid, but she showed it in every small gesture. One evening, after dinner, I caught her staring at the calendar. What's on your mind? I asked. She looked up. It's been 3 months. Since what? Since you gave everything up for me. I smiled. I didn't give everything up. I found what I was missing. But she didn't smile back. Instead, she reached into a drawer and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was cash, not much, maybe a few thousand rupees. What's this? I asked. Everything I saved, she said quietly. In case you ever wanted to go back. I froze. You kept this, for me? She nodded. Because I love you enough to let you go. If one day, you wake up and realize this life, this struggle isn't for you, I want you to have a way out. I didn't know what to say. My throat tightened. My chest ached. Because in that moment, I understood something terrifying and beautiful. Anissa was ready to lose me to protect me. And I was ready to fight the world to keep her. I took the envelope, placed it back in her hands, and said, if we're going to build a life, it won't be one I run from. It'll be one we fight for. Together. She cried again that night, but this time, in my arms. This time, with hope. I thought I knew her heart until I saw the pain she hid behind it. Love can blind you, not in a careless way, but in a trusting one. I thought I knew Anissa. Every sigh, every silence, every careful glance she gave when she thought I wasn't looking. I thought I had seen it all. But the truth is, you can't love someone fully until you've seen the parts they're afraid to show you. And one night, I saw them all. It started like any ordinary evening. I came home tired, sweaty from my second shift. The city lights flickered through the cracked blinds. Anissa was on the couch, pretending to read, but her eyes weren't moving. Something was wrong, I could feel it before a single word passed between us. You okay? I asked, tossing my bag to the floor. She flinched at my voice. That was the first sign. I'm fine, she said too quickly. That was the second. I sat beside her. You've been off lately. Distant. What's going on? Her fingers tightened around the book like it was the only thing holding her together. She didn't look at me when she whispered, "Someone came by today." A man. My chest tightened. Who? Her voice was barely audible. My stepfather. The words struck me like thunder. I had never heard her speak of family, not even once. I assumed they were gone or too far removed. But this? This was something else entirely. He found me, she continued. He said he wanted to talk. I stared at her, waiting. Dreading. He used to hurt me, she said, still not meeting my eyes. When I was younger. When my mother died, he said it was my fault. That I was a curse. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to speak, but the words died on my tongue. Anissa kept going, like the dam had finally cracked. He made my life hell for years. I ran away when I was 15. Took whatever work I could find. That's how I ended up at your fiancé's mansion. Now she looked at me, and I saw it. Not just pain, but shame. As if surviving made her guilty. I never told you, she said, because I didn't want you to see me differently. I didn't want you to see the dirt I came from. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. I thought I buried that part of me, she whispered. But he's back. And he threatened me. Said if I don't give him money, he'll go to the police. Accuse me of theft. Or worse, accuse you of coercing me. I stood up, rage boiling inside me. He's blackmailing you? She nodded. I'll handle it, I said, already reaching for my phone. I don't care what it takes, no, she said firmly, grabbing my wrist. You don't understand. People like him, they don't stop. And if you confront him, he'll use it to ruin you. I sat back down, breath shallow. This was bigger than I expected. Darker than anything I imagined she carried. I should have told you sooner, she said, voice shaking. But I was scared. You already gave up so much for me. I didn't want to be another weight pulling you down. I cupped her face in my hands, forcing her to look at me. You are not a weight, Anissa. You're the reason I'm still standing. Don't ever hide from me again, not like this. She broke down then, completely. The strong, quiet girl I'd fallen in love with shattered in front of me, and I held her like she was the only truth I had left. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor by the bed, thinking. Not about revenge. But about protection. This wasn't just about love anymore. This was war. And I was ready to fight it for her. The past was knocking at our door. And this time, it wasn't going to leave quietly. The next few days passed like walking on glass, every step uncertain, every breath sharp with fear. Anissa barely spoke. Her eyes were always on the window. The shadows outside made her flinch. And I felt like a man sitting on a ticking bomb, waiting for it to go off. I didn't ask her what the man looked like. I didn't need to. The fear in her voice told me enough, this wasn't just a memory. He was real. Alive. Close. And he wasn't done with her. I started walking her to work. Staying up late. Watching every face in the street. I knew it couldn't go on like this, but I didn't know how to stop it. One evening, I came home from my shift to find Anissa sitting on the floor, a letter trembling in her hands. No envelope. Just a folded page written in rushed, angry ink. "What's that?" I asked carefully. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. I took the letter and read it. "I know where you live. I want what's mine. You don't want me to knock on his door next. R. No name. But it didn't need one." I sat down, breathing hard. The rage that boiled inside me was blinding. I wanted to storm the streets and find him. I wanted to tear down the world that let men like him walk free. But Anissa, she just whispered, "It's happening all over again." "No," I said, holding her tightly. "Not this time. You're not alone anymore." But even as I said it, I felt the cracks forming in our world. Because the real world doesn't wait for you to heal. It kicks you when you're down. The very next day, it happened. I came home early with a small surprise food from her favorite stall. I knocked on the door. No answer. My heart dropped. I pushed it open and there she was. Anissa, standing frozen in the kitchen. And across from her, Sophia. My past. My storm. My ghost. Sophia turned to me slowly, her arms crossed, eyes cold but unreadable. "We need to talk." Anissa took a step back, clearly rattled. "She just showed up," she whispered. "I didn't let her in. She forced her way." "It's okay," I said softly, stepping between them. "Anissa, can you give us a moment?" Anissa hesitated. She didn't want to. But she nodded, brushing past Sophia, who didn't even blink. When it was just the two of us, silence filled the room like smoke. Sophia spoke first. "I heard what happened. About your job. About your family. And about her." Her tone wasn't full of pity. It was sharp. "So this is the life you chose." "I didn't choose a life," I said. "I chose a person." Sophia's eyes narrowed. "You think that makes it better?" "No," I admitted. "But it makes it true." She took a step forward, lowering her voice. "Do you have any idea what this looks like? You left our future, for a maid. Now you're broke, in danger, and hiding." "I'm not hiding," I snapped. She raised an eyebrow. "Aren't you?" I stayed quiet. Then, she pulled something from her bag, a folder. "This man she's scared of? The one who threatened her? I found him." My head snapped up. "What?" "I had a private investigator follow her. I was trying to prove she was using you. But I found something else." She slid the folder across the table. Inside were photos, records, a printed police complaint from years ago, one that was ignored. Dismissed. "You're right about her," Sophia said. "She's not weak. She's been through hell." My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. Sophia's eyes softened for the first time. "Because despite everything, I loved you. Maybe I still do. But I know you're not coming back. So if you're going to throw everything away for her, at least be smart. Protect her." I was speechless. Before she left, she turned one last time. "You're not the boy I knew. And maybe that's a good thing. But be careful. You're not in your world anymore." As the door closed behind her, Anissa stepped out from the hallway. She had heard it all. She walked to the table, picked up the folder, and stared at the truth she thought she buried. Tears slid silently down her cheeks. "You still want this?" she whispered. I walked over, wrapped my arms around her trembling body, and said, "More than anything." Because now, we had the truth. And the fight was just beginning. You can't protect someone from the dark, unless you're willing to walk into it with them. We didn't sleep that night. The folder Sophia left sat between us on the table like a silent witness. Every page, every photo, every line of forgotten police reports was a crack in Anissa's soul made visible. I wanted to burn it all. Not to hide it, but to erase the pain it carried. The pain she had buried, lived with, survived through, alone. But instead, I picked up the file and said the words she never expected to hear. "We're going to the police." She shook her head instantly, panic flashing across her face. No. No, we can't. It won't matter. I've been down that road. They didn't believe me then, why would they believe me now? Because this time, I said, my voice steady, you're not alone. She looked away, eyes glassy. I don't want you dragged into this. You've already lost so much. I reached across the table and took her hand in both of mine. I didn't lose anything, Anna. I found you. And if this world won't protect you, then I'll teach it how. She didn't answer. But she didn't pull her hand away either. The next day, we went to the station. I'll never forget the look on the officer's face when we handed over the folder. Skeptical. Cold. Like we were wasting his time. But then he flipped a few pages, recognized a name, and everything shifted. They called us superior. Then another. Within an hour, an investigation was opened. Apparently, we weren't the only ones he had hurt. Anissa's stepfather had a trail, one the system had ignored for years. But now, with evidence and a witness willing to speak again, the silence was breaking. Anissa sat in the waiting area, hands folded tightly in her lap, breathing like each second hurt. When she finally gave her statement, her voice didn't shake. She told them everything, the nights, the bruises, the threats, the escape. She bled truth into the room and didn't flinch once. And when it was done, she walked out of that room like someone who had finally stopped running. I'm proud of you, I said, holding her hand. She didn't smile. But she nodded. And that was more powerful than any grin. We walked home that night in silence. The streetlights flickered above us like ghosts watching from above. What happens now? She asked softly. I didn't have an answer. But I said the only thing I could. Now, we live. And we tried. The days that followed were quiet but tense. We never knew when he'd retaliate, if he would. Then, one afternoon, the call came. Mr. Rafiq has been arrested, the officer said. We found him trying to leave the city. Your testimony was enough. He's not getting out anytime soon. Anissa was in the kitchen when I got the call. She didn't cry when I told her. She laughed. A soft, shaky laugh, the kind that comes after holding your breath for years. Then she turned to me, eyes wide with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Freedom. He's really gone, she whispered. For good, I said. She stepped toward me and rested her forehead against my chest. Then maybe I can finally start breathing again. But peace, as we learned, isn't always quiet. The next few days were filled with small, beautiful things. A walk in the park. A meal shared with laughter instead of fear. Sleep, real sleep, without waking up to nightmares. And one evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the walls golden, Anissa looked at me and said something I'll never forget. I don't know where this ends, but for the first time, I want to find out. With you. It wasn't a promise of forever. But it was a beginning. A real one. And that night, as we sat on the rooftop holding hands, watching the stars blink above our small world, I realized, this wasn't the end of our struggle. But it was the end of hiding. And love finally had room to grow. The past tried to bury us. But we planted something stronger in its place, hope. After the storm faded, we found ourselves in the quiet we had never known. But peace isn't always easy to live with, not when you've only known survival. For the first time, there was no threat at the door, no footsteps to fear, no letter to unravel us. Just mornings. Soft ones. With sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of eggs on the stove. Anissa humming under her breath. We were learning what it meant to breathe again. Still, life didn't wait for us to heal. I was still working both jobs, barely enough to keep the lights on and groceries in the fridge. Anissa, too, had picked up work at a small school nearby, helping clean classrooms after hours. It wasn't much, but it gave her purpose. A rhythm. A reason to step outside without looking over her shoulder. But just because the past was gone, didn't mean the world had changed. One afternoon, I received a letter at the cafe. I recognized the seal before I opened it. My family. It wasn't from my father. Not even my mother. It was from my younger sister, Alina. I don't agree with what you did. But I finally understand it. You were brave enough to choose truth over comfort. I hope one day I can do the same. I miss you. Alina. I stared at the letter for a long time. The paper shook in my hands. Alina had always been different. Quieter. Kinder. And now, she was the first person in my old world to reach across the wall I thought would never fall. When I showed it to Anissa, her hands trembled as she read it. She still sees you, she whispered. Even when the others turned away. I nodded. Maybe someday, the rest will too. But even if they don't, you're not alone anymore, she finished. Weeks passed, and we began piecing together a new kind of life. We started saving. Talking about small things, maybe renting a slightly bigger place, maybe buying a better stove. Maybe one day starting a small corner business, her idea, something that could be ours. The dreams were small, but they were ours. And that made them feel like everything. But sometimes, life has a way of giving you more than you ask for, just to see what you'll do with it. It was a rainy Wednesday when Anissa fainted. We were walking back from the market, and she collapsed right there on the sidewalk. My heart nearly stopped. I carried her to the nearest clinic, soaked to the bone, shouting her name like the wind would carry it to wherever her soul had gone. She woke up an hour later, dazed, pale, confused. Just low blood pressure, the nurse said. But we ran some tests. The doctor walked in a moment later, holding a clipboard with a look I couldn't read. Congratulations, he said gently. She's pregnant. The room fell silent. I turned to Anissa. Her eyes were wide, lips parted in shock. Then tears. Not from fear. But something deeper. Are you okay? I asked, kneeling beside her. She nodded slowly, a smile breaking through her disbelief. I didn't think I'd ever. I thought my body, after everything, she couldn't finish. So I finished for her. You're strong, I said, taking her hand. You were never broken. And in that tiny room, with thunder rumbling outside, we cried together. This time, not from pain, but from a joy that felt almost too big for our small world. That night, back in our apartment, we sat on the floor with a blanket wrapped around us, holding each other like the future itself was knocking at the door. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I said. "But we've survived worse." She looked at me with eyes that had seen both darkness and light. And for the first time, I saw not just the woman I loved, but the mother she was becoming. Strong, brave, beautiful, and completely, overwhelmingly, real. We planted a future with shaky hands. But love, it kept it standing. Pregnancy changes everything. Not just the body, but the soul. Ever since the clinic visit, Anissa moved differently. She held her stomach when she laughed. She stood still a little longer at the window. Sometimes, I'd catch her smiling to herself, like she was talking to someone only she could hear. I had never seen her glow like this. And yet, beneath that quiet joy, there was fear too. "What if I'm not ready?" she asked one night, her voice small in the dark. "What if I become what he was?" I turned to her, placed her hand over my heart. "You carry light, Anissa. You couldn't pass on darkness if you tried." She didn't respond. Just rested her head on my chest, letting my heartbeat say what words couldn't. The next few weeks were the best of our lives. I picked up extra shifts. Anissa stopped working altogether, doctor's orders. We lived simply. Frugally. But for the first time, we weren't just surviving. We were growing something. A baby. A future. A life. I started fixing up the apartment, patching cracks, painting old furniture, even building a tiny crib with my own 2 hands. Every nail I hammered felt like a promise. "I'll give you everything I never had," I whispered once while brushing paint on the wall. Anissa heard me from the couch and smiled. "We already have everything." And for a moment, I believed it. Until the knock came. It was late afternoon. We weren't expecting anyone. Anissa was napping. I opened the door. And froze. My father. The man whose silence had followed me like a curse. He stood in the hallway, wearing the same expression he wore the day I told him I was leaving everything behind. Judgment. And something else, exhaustion. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. I didn't answer. I looked back at Anissa, still asleep, wrapped in a blanket with her hand resting gently over her stomach. Then I stepped aside. He didn't sit. He didn't take off his coat. He just stood in the center of the room, taking it all in: the mismatched furniture, the faint smell of lentils, the cracked tiles. And the crib. His eyes lingered there the longest. "I heard," he said finally. "From Alina." I nodded. "She wrote me." "She shouldn't have," he muttered. "But I'm glad she did." The silence between us stretched like a tightrope. Then he sighed, long, tired, heavy. "You embarrassed me," he said. "Shamed this family. Walked away like none of it mattered." "It didn't," I said, voice steady. "Not compared to her. Or our child." He looked at me sharply. "You think you know struggle now? You've lived 3 months in discomfort and think that makes you a man? I think choosing love over pride makes me one." His jaw clenched. But he didn't argue. Instead, he stepped closer to the crib. Ran a hand along its rough edges. His fingers trembled. "You built this?" he asked. I nodded. "With what I had." He looked at me, then really looked, and for the first time, I didn't see anger. I saw regret. And age. "You're not the man I raised," he said. "No," I replied. "I'm the man I chose to become." He was quiet for a long time. Then finally, he turned to the door. "I won't forgive you," he said. "I'm not asking you to. But I'll be back. With something for the baby. If she'll allow it." And with that, he left. When Anise awoke, I told her everything. She didn't speak at first. Just walked over to the crib and ran her hand over the edge. "You're changing him," she whispered. "No," I said. "You are." She looked at me, eyes brimming with emotion. "You think we'll be okay?" she asked. I smiled. "I don't think. I know. Because for the first time in our lives, we weren't running anymore. We were becoming. Together. Pain gave us our beginning. But love gave us everything after." The final month of Anice's pregnancy moved both slowly and all at once. Each morning was filled with gentle rituals, me helping her sit up, her sipping warm water, soft music in the background, and small dreams whispered like prayers. "Do you think it's a boy or a girl?" she'd ask, resting her hand over the bump that now ruled our little world. "I think it's loud," I'd tease. "Just like its mother." She'd swat my arm, laughing. But beneath the laughter, there was tension. Not fear, not exactly, just the heaviness of waiting. The awareness that any day now, our lives would change forever. It was just after midnight when the pain started. She clutched my hand, eyes wide, breath shallow. "It's happening." And just like that, every ounce of sleep in me vanished. I grabbed the hospital bag. Called a taxi. Ran down 3 flights of stairs with my heart in my throat. At the hospital, they took her in quickly. I wasn't allowed in the delivery room immediately. I sat outside, pacing, praying, whispering every promise I'd ever made. I remembered the first time I saw her, sitting alone on a bench, the world too loud and too cruel for someone so quiet. And now here she was, fighting to bring life into that very world. Time lost meaning. Nurses rushed in and out. I sat frozen, staring at the clock. Until finally, a nurse appeared with a smile. "You can come in now." I didn't breathe until I saw her. Anisa. Exhausted. Pale. Beautiful. And in her arms, our child. Tiny. Wrinkled. Wailing like the world was too small to hold them. "It's a girl," she whispered. My knees almost buckled. I walked to them slowly, afraid I might break from the weight of emotion. Anisa looked up, tears in her eyes. "She's here." I sat beside her, gently brushing the baby's cheek. She opened her eyes, dark like her mother's. Fierce. Alive. "Hello," I whispered. "I'm your dad." Anisa smiled faintly. "She waited for you." We stayed at the hospital for 2 days. Family wasn't allowed in, which was fine, because ours wasn't the kind of family that brought flowers. Until the 3rd day. The nurse peeked into our room. "You have a visitor." I looked at Anisa. She nodded. And in walked my father. With Alina behind him. And in his hands a small, hand-knitted pink blanket. No words at first. Just the 3 of us staring at each other, breathing in all the things we hadn't said. Then Alina stepped forward. "She's beautiful." Anisa nodded, eyes cautious but kind. "Thank you." My father cleared his throat. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. But I want her to know she wasn't born into shame. She was born into strength. He stepped forward, gently placed the blanket beside the baby, and said, "For the nights that get cold." And then he did something I never thought I'd see. He reached out and held his granddaughter's hand. She didn't cry. She gripped his finger. And in that moment, I saw it, the great wall between us finally cracking. He looked at Anissa. "You gave him more than we ever could," he said softly. "I hope you'll let us try again." Tears welled up in her eyes. "We're not asking for anything." He nodded. "That's why you deserve everything." That night, back at our apartment, now with 3 instead of 2, I stood by the crib, watching our daughter sleep. Anissa walked up behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist. "We made it," she whispered. I turned to her, kissed her forehead. "No," I said. "You made it. I just followed the light." She smiled. "Do you think we'll be good parents?" I looked down at the baby, so small, so peaceful, and nodded. "We'll make mistakes. We'll fall. But if love is all it takes to raise a child," I looked into Anissa's eyes, "then she's already the richest girl in the world." The world tried to take everything from us. So we built a world of our own. Years passed, as they always do, quietly, without asking permission. Our daughter, whom we named Noor, grew faster than we could keep up with. Her laughter filled corners that once held silence. Her footsteps replaced the echo of pain. She was born into our brokenness, and somehow, she stitched us back together. Every morning, I'd wake to the sound of Anissa reading her stories. Old fairy tales. But she always changed the endings. "Why do you do that?" I asked once. She smiled without looking up. "Because the real world doesn't give perfect endings. But I want her to believe they're possible." And in that moment, I realized. Anissa wasn't just healing. She was teaching me how to heal too. We never became rich. We never wore designer clothes again or lived behind iron gates. But we had a life. A real one. I started a small mobile repair shop. Just a stall, really, but people trusted me. I fixed their phones, their clocks, their radios, and somewhere in those small moments, I fixed parts of myself. Anissa, once quiet and hidden, started her own daycare in the neighborhood. Mothers adored her. Children clung to her like she was magic. And she was. They never saw what she came from. But they felt what she had become. A woman who turned pain into power. One Sunday morning, while Noor was playing with her crayons on the floor, I sat beside Anissa on the couch, holding an old photograph. It was from my engagement party, the night everything changed. I looked perfect in the photo. But now, I could see the hollowness behind my smile. The way my hand rested on Sophia's waist like it was an obligation, not a choice. Anissa saw the picture and froze. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked, her voice low. I looked at her, the woman who had given me love, truth, a child, a home. I shook my head. "I regret waiting so long to find you." She looked down, a small smile tugging at her lips. "And Sophia?" "She taught me what love isn't," I said. "And I'll always be grateful for that." We didn't keep much from our past, but we kept the crib. It now sat in the corner of Noor's room, filled with toys and stuffed animals. A symbol of how far we had come. Some nights, I'd walk past it and just stare. Remembering every nail, every shaky breath I took while building it, wondering if I was enough. I still don't know if I am. But every time Noor calls me Baba and hugs my neck tight. Every time Anissa falls asleep beside me without fear in her chest. I think maybe, just maybe, I'm getting close. The world outside still judges us. Some people still whisper when they hear how we met. But those voices grow quieter by the year. And the only voice I care about now is the one that calls from the other room, sweet, innocent, full of trust, Baba. Mama. Come see what I made. We walk together to her little table, where a messy drawing of 3 stick figures smiles back at us, hand in hand, hearts above their heads, sun shining in the corner. And I realize, this isn't just our happy ending. It's our true beginning.